For this video, we are going to try to breathe some new life into the Star Wars Miniature Starship Battles game by using a modified version of the Star Wars Miniatures rules. Ta-da! Hello gamers, Matthew here from Grey Army Gaming. Now many of you have probably played this game, Star Wars Miniature Starship Battles. It was released in 2006 by Wizards of the Coast, and it was thought that it would be a nice supplement to the Star Wars Miniatures game. However, the game received a lot of criticism for being quite bulky, clunky, and rather slow, and as such, it fell out of popularity and out of production. Now that is really unfortunate because the game has a ton of really cool spaceship models and there is indeed quite a bit of potential. So my idea was this: why don't we try to combine this game with the exciting rules of Star Wars Miniatures and see if we can turn the game into something of a really fun skirmish game. And that is the point of this video. What I want to do is walk through some of the rule modifications I will be making and then give you an example of how gameplay could possibly look. One cool thing about Starship Battles is that we have tons of cards that come along with the models that we can use now to try to tweak them a little bit, but use them in our gameplay. So let's take a look at this X-Wing Starfighter card and show you how we can use this in our game. The stats cards give us everything that we need for our modified rules. Now let's start in the top right corner. You see that number 6. That is the points value for each of the ships. Now we can use this when we are adding up our forces to see how many points we're going to have on each side. So for example, if we have 5 X-Wing fighters, we're going to have a total of 30 points. Below the points value and slightly to the left, you see the class rating for this ship. Now, class ratings in this game go from 1 to 4. The higher the class rating, the smaller the ship, and the faster the ship. So the X-Wing Starfighter is a class 4 ship. We are going to be using this now for movement. The maximum movement for this ship is going to be 4, its class, times 6 inches. So that gives us a maximum movement of 24 inches. Now you can move 24 inches as long as you do not fire. And that is just like Star Wars Miniatures where you can run 12 inches without firing. However, if you want to move and fire with the X-Wing Starfighter, well then you can move a maximum of the half of the total movement. So 12 inches, and then you can fire. So to summarize then, we have a class of 4 times 6, that's 24 inches maximum movement, but if we want to fire, we can only move a maximum of 12, and then we can fire. Were we to have a class 3 ship instead, we would then have a total of 18 inches movement, so 3 times 6 is 18, and then if we want to fire and to move, we can only move a maximum of 9 inches and fire. To the right of the class, you see the number for the hull, and this is the number of damage that this ship can take before it is taken out of commission. All of the ships that we are using in this introductory video have a hull rating of 1. So they have basically 1 hit point. If they are hit by enemy fire, they are going to be destroyed. Below the class and the hull numbers, you see a circle and a picture of our ship with 4 different numbers. Now, these numbers represent the armor rating for the ship. Some ships have different values, whether you're attacking them on the flank or in the rear or in the front. But with this ship, you see it is a total of 16 in all directions. The one in front, all the way on the top, is going to be the front facing. The bottom is the rear facing. And then you have both the right and the left flank facings. And these numbers correspond nicely with the models themselves. As you can see here, there are markings for the rear, for the flanks, and then if you look on the front of the ship, you see the little notch here that indicates the front of the ship. So the way that we will be playing this is in the following fashion. When this X-Wing Starfighter is attacked, the base armor value it has is 16. Now let's say we have a ship that gives us a +4 benefit to its attack. Well then we would drop that 16 down to a 12. And this applies for all directions because it is 16 on all sides, the front and the rear. Now when we go ahead and attack with that other ship with our +4, bringing this down to a rating of 12, we would then have to roll a 12+ in order to damage the ship. And now you can see that some ships that have a weaker rating on their flanks or rear are much more vulnerable to attacks. So it may be much more beneficial, for example, if a ship has a 10 rating in the rear, to fly your ship behind that ship and then attack. So if you were attacking on a rating of 10 with your +4, that means you would be hitting and damaging on a 6+. Moving to the top left, you see now the description of the weapons. This will provide us the name of the weapon, the attack bonus we get, and the damage that that weapon causes. So let's look, for example, at laser cannon, the first weapon here for the X-Wing Starfighter. We see that with this weapon, we get an attack bonus of +3. So that means we will be dropping the armor of the ship we are attacking by 3 points, and we will do 1 damage if we successfully connect. So were we attacking a TIE fighter, which has an armor rating of 14, and we were using our laser cannon, we would then be hitting on an 11+, since we have a +3 bonus, and we would do 1 point of damage. The hull value for the TIE fighter is one hit point. So with a connection on an 11+, we would take the TIE fighter out of commission. On the bottom left there, we have a space for special abilities for the ship. The X-Wing Starfighter doesn't have any special abilities, so that is left blank. Other ships, however, might have some special abilities, like the TIE Interceptor or the TIE Fighter, and we will try to interpret those rules on a case-by-case basis. So there is a quick run through of the cards that we will be using. Now these cards are that which provide us with the modifications to the rules for our Star Wars miniatures game. Other than that, we're going to try to hold ourselves as much as possible to the base rules of Star Wars miniatures. With that said, let's go ahead and dive into a sample test game. And here's a quick setup that we will be using for this example game. It's a pretty simple setup. When you play your games, you might want to have a lot more terrain than this. But it is a 6-foot by 4-foot board, and we've got a bunch of random pieces of terrain here. Something of a city in the center with rock outcroppings outside of the city, and we've got some forests and some brush. The point is we want to make it look a little bit interesting and throw down things that can block line of sight. If we run over here now to the left, we see our 31 points of the Empire, and these points are based upon the points on the cards. We have 5 total TIE fighters, and we have a TIE Interceptor. On the opposite side of the board, we have the Rebels, and here we have a total of 30 points. We have got 3 Y-Wing, we have 2 X-Wings there, and we have 2 V-Wings. So a total of 30 points versus 31. What we will do is exactly like Star Wars miniatures. We will begin by rolling off for initiative. So here we go. Let's roll off for initiative. Just like in Star Wars miniatures, the Rebels will be using the red die and the Empire using the white. So it'll be 15-4. The Empire will begin. Just as with Star Wars miniatures, we will do alternating activations, activating 2 of the Empire and then 2 to the Rebels, and so on and so forth. Let's begin here by moving our ships, and now they are class 4 times 6 inches for a maximum of 24 inches, maximum of 12 inches if we want to shoot. I think we will begin by moving our Interceptor and another TIE fighter, moving them up to 24 inches and giving them cover. And let's go ahead and mark these 2 as activated with our blue markers. Over to the Rebel forces, let's activate 2 of our figurines. We'll do the 2 on the top, our X-Wings, and also fly them in 24 inches for cover. And let's go ahead and mark those as well. So with that finished, we would then head back over to the Empire. They would activate 2 more, and then we would go back and activate 2 more of the Rebels. Now for this game, to try and keep it interesting, I'm going to limit the range of weapons to 24 inches. So this is really important. You can't just sit on the side of the battlefield and shoot at people and pick them off. You have to get engaged. So a maximum of 24-inch range, which means we're going to have to move both these sets of 2 here and these sets of 2 into closer range if we want to be able to shoot. So let's go ahead and just move them, and I'll show you how it looks afterwards. So now that we've finished activation, that is the end of this round. I will show you how things sit right now. We have got our TIE fighters here, and up on top. All of them are behind cover. Marching up the field here, we have our Y-wings, we have our X-wings behind the cover of the trees, and finally down here, we have our V-wings also with cover. So everything is now within range. This is where the real combat begins, and just like Star Wars miniatures, we will have to roll for initiative again. White for the Empire, red for the Rebels. Here we go. 12 to 10, the Rebels will begin. To begin the Rebel activations, let's activate these two V-wings right here. See if we can fly them 12 inches down here so that they will be able to get a shot off on these ships over here. So 12 inches of movement, maximum movement to be able to shoot. They will be right in this position. We're going to fire off on these guys, but we need to see if they have any cover, because just like Star Wars miniatures, if you have cover, that's an additional +4 to the defense. When we get down to this angle now, we see that the V fighter to the left has an unobstructed line of sight, so no penalty for shooting. The one on the right, however, has a bit of an obstructed view, which means there will be a 4-point penalty to its attack. So I put the cards down here again just to make it clear what we were doing when we figure out the math of this attack. We look here at the V-wing starfighter who is shooting onto the TIE fighter. The V-wing starfighter is going to use a laser cannon, and that is a +3. If we look at the armor now for the TIE fighter, it is a 14 on all directions, so it doesn't really matter where we are hitting the TIE fighter. Our placement doesn't matter in this case. So with a 14, we have a +3. That'll make us hitting on an 11+. So on an 11+, we will do 1 point of damage against the hull strength of 1, taking the TIE fighter out. 11+, here we go. And it's 11! Let's return now to our other V-wing fighter here who is attacking the Interceptor. The Interceptor has cover, however, which gives it a +4 benefit, or we could say a -4 to hit. Now, if we look here, the armor for the TIE Fighter Interceptor is a 16. So let's add the benefit here of +4 to the ship because of its cover, which means 20. Now, we are going to be using the laser cannon again, which is +3. So that takes us from 20 down to 17+. 17+ to hit and kill that ship. And it is an 8, no. With those shots taken now, we are done with those activations. So let's go ahead and mark those two with blue markers showing that they have been activated. Back to the Empire. Let's go ahead and activate these two TIE fighters, bring them down here, fly them down here, and take shots off on these guys. On second thought, that's kind of a dumb idea because these guys have already activated. So let's not attack them. Let's attack somebody who has not been activated. Let's go to the top of the board instead. Much better. Let's go ahead now and take these two TIE fighters, fly them 12 inches north of the town, and try to attempt to hit these Y fighters. So there we go, final positions. I sent this guy right up the middle of the streets because he wasn't going to get an unobstructed shot on those guys over there. This guy still has an unobstructed shot up there, so he flew north. We're going to have both of them now fire off onto these Y fighters. And it's kind of fun here that Boba Fett's ship is docked right here. Slave 1 is there. Boba Fett, for some reason, is in this little village in Tatooine. Who knows why? We're just going to ignore him for now. Let's begin now by shooting this guy over onto this Y-wing in the back. Now, the Y-wing has an armor rating of 14. The TIE fighter has laser cannons of +2, unobstructed, so we're going to be hitting on a 12+. 15! Yes! So 15 is enough to take him out. 1 hull wound, and we do 1 damage. Second off, let's have this guy right here take a shot off on this guy in the front. Same thing, 12+, unobstructed. 12+, yes! And with those TIE fighters, with their turns over, we can mark them as activated. So that is basically how this game is going to proceed. Just like Star Wars Miniatures, we'll move next to our activation of 2 Rebel ships. There's 3 of them here that haven't been activated yet. The Empire also has 3 ships that haven't been activated. We've got 2 down here. We've got the Interceptor. But we will continue in this fashion, going back and forth with activations of 2 at a time until we get to the end of activations. And in that case, that is the end of that round. We roll off for initiative and we continue to play the game as normal. Well, there you have it, folks. My attempt to rework Star Wars Miniatures Starship Battles rules to make the game more similar to Star Wars Miniatures. One of the things I really like about this system is that I preserve the cards and the stats and the feel of Starship Battles. So we're going to use the cards, we're going to use these armor ratings, we're going to use the point values and the benefits of the weapons and all that stuff that I already talked about on the cards. But what's really cool is that we can put this into the Star Wars Miniatures rule set with its alternating activations, and we can just make it an all-around quicker game. Make it more of a skirmish game instead of this massive space battle game. This is, of course, just a basic rules setup here, and there are many variations that we could work on to make this game even better. One variation I'm thinking about playing around with is that even on ships like the TIE Fighters that have a 14 armor rating on the whole ship, it would be fun to introduce the idea that, well, maybe the front facing always has 14, maybe the side facings have 1 point less, so 13, and then the rear facing has 12. So even on ships that have armor ratings at the same on all directions, it would be fun to play with that idea to try to see if we could make it more strategic to try and get a better position behind ships when you are attacking them. As I mentioned in the introduction to this video, it is a shame that this game has fallen out of popularity because it has such a great line of models, such a cool aesthetic, and there's so many possibilities for it. The only thing that it needs is a little bit of help to try and make the rules a bit more exciting and lifelike, and fortunately we have Star Wars Miniatures from Wizards of the Coast that can help us do that. If you appreciate these kind of videos, please do give me a thumbs up, leave a comment below, and subscribe to the channel, and I will continue to produce this kind of content with the hope of maybe making our collective gaming experience just a little bit better. And most of all, thank you for joining us here today at Grey Army Gaming for the future of gaming.